we go again?
Oh, no, not again.
You've seen it before, haven't you?
Dom, how long have we been doing this?
Once more unto the bridge, dear friends.
Again and again and again until we're both dead.
Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews and connections in mind. John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum is directed by Chad Stahelski and once again stars Keanu Reeves as John Wick, a member of a secret organization of assassins where he is considered one of the best, if not the best. However, after the events of the previous film, he finds himself excommunicado and is now being hunted down by his own organization, and he has to figure out a way to stay alive and survive his own organization, as well as to figure out how to get back into their good graces, if he even can. Now, this review will contain spoilers of John Wick Chapter 3 as well as other films and TV series. There'll be a full list below. I'll be doing my spoiler-free review beforehand. However, just going into the future, if you have not seen John Wick Chapter 3 yet, or any of the films listed below and want to wait until you have, be sure to just watch my spoiler-free portion, and then I'll announce once again when I'm going to get into some spoilers. But with this in mind, let's do some spoiler-free thoughts on John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. I thought that this movie is a solid installation in the John Wick franchise. This is almost kind of like a Marvel situation in that there are certainly more films that you like better than others in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but none of them are downright awful. There are some that are better than others, for sure, but this is also similar, in fact, to the Mission Impossible franchise. They're all pretty good, if you don't count 2, of course, and they're all kind of a similar level of good. It's just a matter of personal preference. This is just as good as John Wick and John Wick Chapter 2. I think that this is a phenomenal action film for starters. I mean, the action in this film is amazing, as it has been throughout the franchise. Cinematography, while I feel like it did cut a little bit more in the action scenes than some of the previous films, I thought that this was just as good and some of the best action I've seen, and I thought this did what a sequel should do for a good sequel should do in a franchise where it places in the world. We know what the character of John Wick can do, and then this film kind of places them in situations that are feasible in the world, and it allows us to see what he could do under different situations than what he's been presented with in the previous 2 films. Much as I love the previous 2 films, the first and second film are all rather similar to each other in terms of story and action in that regard. And this one, I feel, focuses while it's not too dissimilar from the other 2, it's similar enough to make it feel unique, and while still feeling right at home in the franchise. Like I said, the action is fantastic. Keanu Reeves as John Wick, he's great as the character, though he's not really the most talkative person or the most concise person or great at conveying emotion, and maybe that worked better in the first film where he was still kind of in grief. Even though this is in universe, this is within like a couple weeks of the first film happening. But I don't know, something about Keanu Reeves' performance, it works, but it doesn't work as well, I feel like, as the other 2 John Wick films. The new characters that we find in this, specifically Halle Berry's character, who I forgot her name at this stage in time, she did good. I just feel like she didn't have a whole lot to do. She had nice dogs. Those were fun in her scene. But even that, I feel like the dog stuff kind of got repetitive after a while. That was a long action scene that they did with Keanu Reeves and Halle Berry teaming up. But then we had that scene, and then her character just kind of vanishes from the rest of the movie. And that's kind of a bummer. I kind of wish that we could have explored her as well going into throughout the rest of the film. And maybe that will happen later on down the road if there's a fourth film. But overall, I would say that John Wick Chapter 3 is a solid B, I would say. This is just a fantastic action set piece. There is one set in particular that they use. They introduce it, and then my thought when they get back to it for more action, I was like, yes, thank you. There was no way that you would have built that set and not had it for an action set piece, and it worked out phenomenal. I just thought that this was a solid sequel. Maybe not the best of the John Wick franchise for me. I think the first one's still probably the best. 2 is just barely below it. And if the first John Wick is here and the John Wick Chapter 2 is like right around here, maybe John Wick 3 is just a little bit right there, I'd say. I mean, there are diminishing returns a bit, but it's not all that much, which is impressive for a franchise. So I thought this was a great movie, and I would definitely recommend seeing it in theaters, especially with an audience. This is a fun movie to see with an audience, especially when creative kills are happening and everyone in the theater goes, ooh, and ee, and yikes. And that was excellent. I had a lot of fun with this viewing in a theater, so I recommend seeing it with as good an audience as you can get. See it with a bunch of friends too. They'll have a ball. So at this point, I'm going to go into some spoiler-filled analysis of things that seem familiar in John Wick Chapter 3 and where you may have seen them before. So spoilers from here on out. I thought that the beginning action scene where John Wick is being pursued by that first gang, and then he finds himself in a antique warehouse, it looks like, and then he's in among a whole bunch of display cases full of knives, and he and the other guy are just breaking cases and throwing knives at each other, and they have a seemingly endless supply. That almost kind of reminded me of the fight from the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, The Curse of the Black Pearl, in which Jack Sparrow and Will Turner are fighting in the blacksmith shop, and Jack Sparrow notices that there's a whole rack of swords there, and then they start throwing swords at each other and just picking up more swords, and the sword gets deflected to get another sword, and so they just had endless swords there. So not a direct comparison, but a interesting comparison to make nonetheless. Also, I mentioned it briefly that there was this movie franchise is similar in quality-wise to the Mission Impossible franchise after 2, in that they're all very similar. And there's another comparison to be made here, namely the fact that John Wick is now excommunicado from his own organization and he has to survive his own organization. There's a certain Ethan Hunt-ness to that, where Ethan Hunt in every other movie he and his team are being disavowed, and then they're getting hunted down by, if not their bad guys, then their own friendly organizations like the CIA and the NSA or whatever, various European police forces. So there's a similar quality to be said there. And finally, I would say another comparison we made is in the finale when the Continental New York is evacuated, and it's all up to John Wick, Winston, the concierge's name, who I can't remember, and their security force against the finest of the high tables soldiers. That kind of reminded me a bit of the Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 2 3-parter, which is The Homecoming, The Circle, and The Siege, especially The Siege, in which our crew finds himself previously in a sanctuary station, finding themselves no longer welcome on the station due to various political manipulations, and they find they have to hole up in the station while a hostile force boards Deep Space Nine, and they have to rebel from within the station and do essentially guerrilla tactics and try to whittle down these forces that have invaded. There's just a similar story structure there, where the main heroes are fighting on their home turf against another force after it's forced to. That all the people living there or staying there had to be evacuated. So that's just my main comparisons. But what did you think of John Wick Chapter 3 if you made it this far? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What about my analysis? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I think I missed anything? I may have missed something. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to look for my next movie review, which will be for the live-action Aladdin, which comes out Memorial Day weekend. Also, I do TV reviews, so up on my channel right now are my reviews and episode reactions to each episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery and Season 2 of The Orville. And who knows, maybe at the end of this season I will post a review of, just because I can, Season 6 of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I really like that show and it's on right now. We're 2 episodes in. I'll give an analysis of that. Again, thank you so much for watching, but just remember, there's nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.